Let's go Russ, man. I think this is
All right.
this is kind of a polarizing
Yeah.
move.
So Russell Westbrook, and this was something that had been discussed for a while at this point, right? Because I think we were hearing about this, at the beginning of free agency, right? It was like day one, right, where it was kind of rumored that the Clippers were probably going to get rid of Westbrook. And we had heard towards the end of the season, right, that actually he didn't really love his time there, right, as a Clipper, at least this season. Maybe he did the year before, but now he's headed to the Denver Nuggets. So, or reportedly, right? So what's happened is this is a sign and trade where Chris Dunn of the Utah Jazz, which we had heard about, this was another day one Clippers thing, but it hadn't happened at all, right? Because they needed to kind of get together the mechanisms to do it. We'd heard stuff about Westbrook. So it sounds like Chris Dunn is going to go to the Clippers, right, on a 3-year, $17 million deal. And then Russell Westbrook's going to go to the Jazz again, right, where he will be bought out again. And then he'll join the Denver Nuggets. So, I guess we'll look at it initially from a Westbrook Nuggets perspective and then a Clippers Chris Dunn perspective. Obviously, right, Westbrook, it was interesting, right? Because as a Clipper, right, he was a starter, right? When he was on the Lakers, initially he was a starter, and then his second year he started and then came off the bench, then started for the Clippers, then started until they brought Harden. When they first brought in Harden, right, he was starting as well. Then he came off the bench, and then it sounded like he was he was the one that initiated it, but then later reports almost kind of casted some doubt on that. So we'll see what happens. I'm assuming he's going to come off the bench, right? I don't think he starts, right? But I guess now you'd rather be on the Nuggets than the Clippers, right? Well, you already would have been, but now you have an even better chance. Apparently, Jokic, right, vouched for this as well, right? So that's kind of interesting, just because they're very different players. But again, if you're the Nuggets, you did lose KCP, but you did bring in Russell Westbrook and you brought in Dario Saric, so you did get some help to shore up that second unit, which is nice. But it did kind of come at the cost of probably making your starting five worse, right? And we know what Westbrook can still do as a player, right? He can run the floor, right? He can run the point, especially in transition. Still can't really shoot. Sometimes is willing to defend, but he does rebound well for a guard still. And when he wants to, he will definitely bring the energy and effort. He is an older guy, right? He did have an injury last year that kept him out for a little bit, but he also is a pretty durable guy, so that should also be nice for Denver to help, give you an energy guy, for the, stretches of the season where you need it, because we know that starting five was stretched pretty thin last year for the Nuggets, and it seemed like it cost them, by the end of that postseason run against Minnesota. So, again, it's better than nothing, right? I mean, would it have been better to keep Reggie Jackson? I mean, Westbrook is still a better player at this point, I would say. So, you got a talent upgrade, but the fit, I think, is a lot funkier just because of the fact that we know he can't shoot. We know teams are going to guard him like he can't shoot, and we know that's consistently been a problem unless he plays off the ball, which, sometimes he does, but other times he doesn't. So, this could be fine, right? Does it change a whole lot? Probably not, but again, it does help bolster your second unit.
Yeah, I'm with this move 100%. I think it helps the Nuggets tremendously more than people
Yeah, it's
probably.
like a no-brainer deal. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, and I think it helps the Nuggets more than people will realize until we kind of see it in action. Give them the keys to the second unit, and it's good for you because you look at what
Yeah.
what it did for the Clippers. Granted, very different team, very different play style, very different coaching as well. But when they handed them the keys, they went on a very good run, very good run. Clippers looked like the best team in the West at that point. And also just a point to his defense. Last year, individually, defensively, was the best of his career. And I think that's because he's not, exerting as much, brain power and just power in general on the offensive end, where it's like, all right, yeah, like, let me lock in on defense because I'm not being asked to average a triple double, in previous years of his career. And this is from Second Spectrum Tracking. I think it was, he ranked fourth in field goal percentage allowed as the contesting defender among players to contest 300 plus shots last season. So very good in terms of what he's able to do on the closeout end. Yeah, I think he will help them a lot alongside Sarge, like you were saying. And I've also heard that, he can potentially fill in for a starter at times. That's kind of intriguing as well. I think Woj put it out as a spot starter or something like that. So that should be interesting, if injuries do happen and he has to elevate, because I would be intrigued between, Jamal Murray, Russell Westbrook, and Jokic. I think that's a very interesting trio alongside Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. as well. So, I think they have the tools to be successful there. It's just a matter of utilization. And, I think he knows his role at this point in his career.
I mean, again, the main thing is the playoffs will always continue to be a question.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the issue, right? His regular season impact has been very good for the most part, right? But the problem has been the postseason, and is that going to get better in a different situation? Probably not. But ideally, if you're the Nuggets, can you get like 15 decent minutes out of him in the postseason?
I think so.
That would be kind. And again, with Saric, we'll see what he does. Again, kind of a weird fit, but again, you do have to kind of add, just talent to kind of bolster the second unit. But you still probably need at least two of those young guys, I think, to be rotational players too, right? Probably, Christian Brown. I think you need a big, year from him, right? In terms of taking a leap in year 3, right? I think you kind of need Peyton Watson also to kind of take another leap as well in year 3. I think those are the two main guys because it doesn't seem like any of the second year guys will probably be ready. Maybe Strother, but outside of that, right? Like Pickett hasn't really done anything, right? In, his second year, even in summer league, right? And then Hunter Tyson is a 3-point shooter, which, again, Denver could use some more 3-point shooting, but you also have Dario Saric, so it's like you can just kind of use him in that role.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it is kind of interesting. Even like the Nuggets general manager or whatever, he said, I think we need some help in the backcourt. And they got it, because I think he was right 100%, where it's like, didn't have Reggie Jackson. We already knew that this move was coming. It was more so a matter of when, and it's finally happened. And I think, now that's happened, I think there'll be more eyes on it. But I think it's definitely one of those that you kind of have to watch and let simmer.
Yeah, and now I think their roster is, pretty much filled up. So,
yes.
No more moves for them, I think, over the course of this offseason, right? Unless there's some type of trade that happens later in the year.
Yep.
Yeah, and then from a Clippers perspective, right, you added Chris Dunn to replace Russell Westbrook, right? I guess, a similar vein in terms of like an athletic guard, but a little bit different, right? I think his 3-point shooting's been better, although he doesn't attempt a lot of them. And he's a better defender, right? And he's also younger, right? Former lottery pick, right, for the Chicago Bulls. Didn't really pan out, but has been good for the Jazz, right? Kind of been like a sneaky, underrated guy for the Jazz. So, that's a nice guard replacement, since you're losing out on Russell Westbrook. Again, he's not like a playoff tested guy, but it does feel like the Clippers are kind of moving into a new phase anyways, right? So, this is the type of move where it's like, this is fine, right? Like, are they going to be better than last year? Probably not. But, again, what is even really the goal anyways? So it's just like, I mean, at the very least, you've added some solid players, I guess.
Yeah. And it's like, I think with him, his counting stats don't kind of tell you the whole story. He does a lot on the defensive end in terms of deflections and being very pesky. If you watch him, you know what I'm talking about. And like you talked about, the 3-point percentage being serviceable and viable, I think that helps his case a lot as well. Because like you said, 36.9% from the 3-point range in 66 games is pretty good, albeit the volume is just a little low. But regardless, it's a good deal as well. I think they said 3-year, $17 million deal with a non-guaranteed season on the 3rd year. So that gives you a lot of flexibility if you're the Clippers as well. So I think it's more of like we just needed somebody to replace Russell Westbrook, and it doesn't make us feel like it's a super bad downgrade or anything like that. So I like the move for them as well.
Right. Yeah. Again, like, you lost Westbrook, but you did add a guy, who's, it's an upside guy, right? Where it's like maybe he's not as good as Westbrook, but, he's still been a solid player, and, he may, and it's a long-term deal as well, right? Like, so it's like, if it works out, you get like a solid backup point guard. And if it doesn't work out, then, that's a trade piece possibly down the line.
Yeah, and it seems like, the Clippers, like, we know they're probably not going to be as good and as competitive like you talked about, but it seems like they are forming a very intriguing identity where they went out and kind of nabbed a bunch of more so defensive-minded guys, I guess, like in Batum, Dunn, Derek Jones Jr. as well. So you can kind of see that they're kind of adding on to that alongside Kawhi Leonard. So my philosophy is they're probably going to give Harden a little bit more. They're probably going to ask him to do a little bit more on the offensive end, but who knows? But the identity seems like it is kind of formulating, although it won't be, nearly as competitive as last year.
Right, because the main issue now is that if Kawhi has to miss like 20 plus games,
Yeah, it's GG's.
that's probably it.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.